Okay, so this month's blog is in the form of a video. I'm going to briefly talk here about concepts, because I think the idea of concepts is really important for junior golfers when they're learning the game. So golfers are only ever going to be as good as their concepts. If their concepts are off, it's potentially going to make their technique off, going to make their swing off, it's going to make it more difficult for them to solve the problem and control the golf ball, get it to go where they want it to go. So really simple way of explaining this is, if I've got this stake here, imagine it's all nice and soft and muddy around me. I've got my hammer and I'm just trying to drive this stake in a straight line directly down into the ground. Okay, so what I would do is I would understand that when I'm hitting the stake, I've got to have the head of the hammer traveling straight. So I've got to have it hitting the stake flush, and I've got to have the end of it pretty square. I know that I don't want to be doing this because I'm going to bend it, and I don't want to be hitting it like that. I need to hit it, it needs to be square on, and I need to hit it flush. And I could probably do this all day long, nice and simple. I could drive it straight down because I understand the concept of exactly how I need this hammer to move as it's making contact with the stake. Makes complete sense, right? But in the golf swing, we often forget this part and do it the other way round. We would be thinking about, okay, where do we want the feet to be? Where do we want the shoulders to be? How do we need the arm to move? How do we need the wrist to move? What does the head need to do? And we're doing all these things, but we're not actually clear on the concept of exactly what we're trying to do with the club to get the ball where we want it to go when it's hitting the ball. Okay, so this is why it gets a bit off with golf, and it can complicate things, and why it's so important for juniors starting off in the game to get these things right from the start, because their technique will then evolve from that. So back to this analogy again here, if I'm clear that I need to have it moving straight and be square, my technique will evolve. I'll start to position my feet accordingly. I'll start to move my arm accordingly. I'll position my upper body accordingly. I'll move my wrists accordingly, because I'm clear about the concept. I'm clear how I'm trying to move the hammer, and my technique evolves from that. It starts with understanding what I'm trying to do with it, and then it works back from there. My technique evolves, as I say, from clarity of the concept. But as I just said, and can often get the other way around with golf, and it is understandable in a certain extent, because the ball's on the ground, we've got to make it go in the air. We don't have a square face, we have loft on it, we don't have it up straight like this, we have it kind of at an angle like this. So there's lots of things that make it a bit more complex, especially when you're an 8-year-old, let's say. So classic example, it's absolutely rife with juniors. They do it all the time, really common. When the ball's on the ground or even on a tee, you will see a lot of this. They tend to try and lean back, have the club moving upwards, trying to help the ball in the air. And what that can simply be is a concept issue. So if generally, I talk to juniors about this all the time, but they will always go back to thinking, when you're striking the golf ball with an iron and the ball is on the ground, which way does the club need to be moving to get the ball in the air? They will almost always say upwards, because it does make sense, especially when you're an 8-year-old. And then their technique will evolve from that. So if their concept is off and they think it needs to move upwards, well, they're always going to swing like this, because their technique is evolving from their understanding of that concept. Now, if they can be really clear and always reinforcing that concept, it has to move down, well, their swing technique can now evolve from that. They'll maybe start to transfer their weight a little bit more effectively, start to rotate a little bit better, because they're understanding and they're clear that the club has to move downwards when it's hitting the ball. Same thing with does the face need to be square? Which way does the club path need to move to the right, to the left, etc., etc. So that's a really big thing with junior coaching, is often you don't need to sort of look too much at the technique side of things initially anyway. Juniors are pretty good at self-organising and being able to manage themselves and figure things out, but only if they're clear on the concepts, they're clear on exactly what the club needs to do as it's hitting the ball. And as I say, the technique can evolve from there. So key thing is always checking in with junior golfers on their concepts, making sure they're clear on the concepts, and technique, as I say, can evolve from that.